Hey guys, welcome back to the third tutorial on Git, and in this tutorial we're going to talk about Git Ignore. So if we go back to the unstaged file, remember unstaged files are files, those are not kind of ready to be submitted yet. Okay, so there can be some changes and so on and so forth. Anyway, so if we go back to the unstaged file, you can see there is a lot of library files in here, right? And in Unity, basically, we don't need the library files. Or in Java, in many cases, you don't need the bin files. All right. So there can be in your development process, there can be some situations where you actually don't want some particular files or folder. So how can we ignore those files when we are submitting them to Git? Because we don't want them to be tracked. Because what is happening in Git is basically Git has a track of all our files that we submit here, right? So if we don't want to track a few particular files, how can we do that? Now you may ask that, well, why should I bother about tracking some particular file and untracking a few one? Well, when you are doing all your development process in the local, there might not be that much of harm. But when you are trying to submit these whole changes into GitHub, which we have not done yet, obviously, then it is going to be an hassle, because then you have these all files that you don't even need to be submitted, but you're still submitting those files, right? So that is why it's a really good practice to use git ignore and always maintain the files that you use or that you need, and don't track the files that you don't need, right? I think you got the idea. So how can we do that? To do this, we are going to create a new file that is named as gitignore. To create that, we can simply right click on the directory where our Git is initialized. For me, this is the place where my Git was initialized, right? Um, you can click on this view item, and if you click hidden items, you can see this little Git, right? Little Git here. So this is basically the all the reference of the Git repository. Anyways, so yeah, what we're going to do, we're going to create a new text document, and we're going to name we're going to just first of all let's open this up. All right, open this up, and then now what should we put here? Now there is a few tricks that I'm going to show you, like how do I know that which file I need and which file I don't need. This is this is really hard to manage manually, right? So for that, we have some really good reference here. So we can search for git ignore file, and then you can actually let's do this. Let's do, for example, if you are developing for a Java project, right? So you can do Java git ignore. You can do this, and then it will let you go to some project like this. So you have this git ignore java.gitignore, right? So you need these things. You don't you need to copy this part. All right. I am using Unity, so I'm going to say Unity gitignore, and then I can find this. I'm going to copy all this from here. You can see the library is here, and I'm going to paste it. Now, before moving on, I'm going to talk about what these things means, and you need to actually understand this. Otherwise, you don't know what are you ignoring and what you are not. So to 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 ignore any kind of like folders, you can just simply do this. You can just because I am in this directory, right? The Git is in here, so I'm going to um, I'm using the git ignore file in this directory. So I have library in here. So that is why I'm using slash library. This means small or capital L, the first one, small L or capital L, doesn't matter. Even it was a library folder with a smaller case L, it should be ignored, right? temp folder, uh, object folder. So these are all the folders that we are going to ignore, right? Then we are going to use these assets, and then we're going to use all of them inside asset, and we're going to just use all the meta files. So there is some files inside Unity, those are the meta files, right? So then we have this Visual Studio directory, and we have those Gradle. So all these things, like you can just use the directory directly to ignore them, right? Now there is this thing star cs proj. So that means star means any file, right? So all files in my whole repository which has a dot csprog extension will be ignored, right? Any um, any file that has a dot suo extension will be ignored, and so on. So this might be a little bit of like overwhelming for you guys. So let's look into the Java example as well, so it is more clear to you. Let's see. Yeah. All right. So here we're going to ignore all file that has extension of dot class. So this star means all file with extension of class, all files with extension of log, right? All files with extension of rar, and so on. So this is more easy to like understand. So that's why I'm showing you this. And if you have a folder, if you have something inside a folder, you can actually do this slash thing, right? So you go to that folder, and everything inside that folder will be ignored or excluded. All right, so after I do that, the next part I want to do is make sure that this is a git ignore file. So to do that, we need to make that like rename this with dot git ignore. Now this sometimes doesn't work. As you can see, if I right click, it says that this is a text file, but I don't want it to be a text file. I want it to be a like git ignore file, right? So how can I change that? Um, So here is an option inside view called file name extension, right? So click on that. That will show you the file extension, and get rid of the txt part. It will ask you for this warning, and you just need to say yes. So now this is basically a git ignore file, and this is the text file. After that, if we now go back to our repo, we can see now all my library are gone, right? All the libraries are gone. Now I have some few other stuff. I can basically submit them. I can select all the project settings and then submit, just like I did last tutorial. Create a commit message, submit all the project settings. I also can do the packages. This is a good practice to like create multiple commits, right? So I could do this as well. I could just, you know, I could do just stage all changes, but that is not a good practice. Then if something is broken in your project, then you are all again in a mess. You just need to change everything. You cannot find the actual part in this whole bunch of stuff that you have submitted, you know, randomly. So just make your commits smaller, so that if you find that there was an error, you can go back to that particular commit and then change that particular part. All right, so when I'm talking about going back to a commit, I'm just talking about going back to here. For example, if I check out, I can go back there. All right, so we're going to talk about that just in a bit. So anyways, all right, so yeah, I'm going to submit this two part. I'm going to say packages for I can just say here added git ignore, right? So here I have created a bunch of commits, right? Now when you do a commit, that's all you have to do in your local repo, right? So now you have the track of all the changes that you have done in your local repository. All right. Now let's talk a few things before we move on to our next lecture, which is going to be adding this thing with our remote, which is GitHub. All right. So the things that I'm going to talk about is what have we learned till now. Let's talk about that, and then we are going to um, talk about something else. So we have talked about Git repository, that is a folder which is basically a container for the Git. We have talked about Git commit. This is basically submitting your changes to the local Git, right? So the local Git copy, which we have created, we have not added the remote yet. So that means every changes that we are submitting through commit is basically adding up into our local Git. Okay, we have unstaged change. That means um, this changes has not been committed or not ready to submit. Okay, staged changes, these are basically changes that are ready to be submitted but not yet submitted or committed, right? So basically we we move files to the staged part to commit it, right? Okay, so yeah, so that was nice. The last thing that we're going to talk about, oh, we also talked about git ignore, right? Git ignore um, helps to ignore unimportant files. All right. So yeah, so let's close this, and then we are going to talk about stashing. Okay, so let's first understand why do we need stashing. So I'm going to go to my project. Just to make things simple, I'm going to create a C# script. C# is almost similar to Java. So even if you don't understand Unity, it is not going to harm you. So just keep patience and just try to see what I'm trying to do here. It's going to help you out. So don't worry too much. Okay. Um, okay. So this is my code. Because I created a new file, if I now go back to the Git, you're going to see that I have this, like, I have this new green things. These are basically when you have green, you have this green plus icon. That means you have new changes in your project, right? So I have created this new file. So I'm going to commit that as well. I'm going to say okay. Um, let's not commit that yet. Actually, let's commit it. Let's commit this too. I'm going to say edit first script. Okay. Now, um, yeah. Anyways, so yeah. So in here we can now write down a few line of code. We can just, I'm just going to make it easier for you guys to understand, just like Java. Forget about all that. Looks just like Java, right? So yeah. Here we can just write down a few. We're just going to declare a few variables. I'm going to say public int health equals 5. Then I can also create another variable public float um, scores. Okay. So after I go back to my, sorry, after I go back to here, as you can assume that when you do any change in any folder inside your Git repo, that will be reflected here as well, right? So now if I click on this thing, it is yellow, and you can see what are the particular changes that I have made, right? So I have deleted all these things. The red means the deletions, plus with a green means you have added these lines. So I have added this, I have added these 2 lines, I have deleted mono behavior, and so on. Now say I don't want to apply this change, I just want to keep it somewhere safe, okay, just to use it later on. Why do we want to do that, right? So one example can be, say I want to add a new thing in my project. Say I want to create a new C# script. Okay, so I'm going to create a new C# script, but I don't want to apply it on top of this, right? So basically staging is going to help you to save your last project somewhere safe, and then you can use that on top of a new change. Let me explain that in a bit. Let's first stage all these changes, right? So if I stage this change, stash, sorry, not stage, stash. If I stash the changes, that means the changes has been unapplied, or it's basically undoing, right? So I have done a undo operation. Okay. Now if I go back to Unity, you will see let's not go back to Unity, let's go back here. You can see all the changes that I made is gone, right? Nothing is in here now. Oops. Yeah, so none of my change is there, because now they're basically stored in somewhere safe, but they're not in my project. Okay. um so if I open this up again, you'll see it's not in there. So if I go in here and just apply the stash, there is 3 options. Delete the stash, that will delete the changes forever, you cannot retrieve this. Well, there is options to retrieve this, but just for explanation purposes, those are more advanced stuff, we're going to talk about that. But you cannot normally get that back. So delete is means that stash will be gone, the things that you have kept somewhere secret is going to be gone. Pop means you're going to delete the you're just going to take the changes that you have kept from in a bag, and you're going to take everything from there. You're going to delete the stuff that you kept, and you're going to apply that in your project. So let's um, do the third one, which is apply the stash. Apply the stash means there should be 2 copies of the change. The change that you have kept somewhere secret will be there, as well as here. So this is the changes, the stash that you saved somewhere safe. This is in here. WIP means work in progress, so it's in here. And then you also have this, which is the same stuff that you have stashed, right? So you have now applied that changes in here. So this is what apply means. Okay, so let me delete these changes first, and let me explain the last option, which is pop. So now if I do pop, now you see you don't have the copy of the stash. You have taken everything from the stash and applied it right away on your project, right? So if I go back in here, you can see we have this the changes that has been applied here again, right? So this is pretty cool, right? So we can go back and forth every time we want. And the point that I was trying to make, that why do we need stashing? So if I do stash, say after doing some stash, I can go back to the last changes that I made, right? So this is the last change that I made, right? It is just like the previous change that I have made. Now say I want to use this instead, right? So maybe I want to add a, I want to use this. I want to use just uh, int a equal 5, something like this maybe. Now if I commit this, now I have this change applied to my hello world.cs, and this change is not, right? So what we could do now is, like, if I now try to apply the stash, you'll see there is a problem, right? So we're going to fix that eventually, so don't worry about that now. If I even try to pop it, I'm going to delete this just for now. If I try to, oops, no. If I try to pop this, it's also does the same thing, right? So yeah, we're going to talk about that later. But for now, you can understand that what have we done here? We have a stash that is kept here. We have done some changes here, right? Whatever changes that you have made, that has been applied on top of this, and you still have the changes that you have made. Now you may ask, well, I want to get back to this change. I don't want the current change. What should I do? Then we can, like, reset this commit to this one, right? Because you see, this was the last position where everything was working just fine. Then we had some new commit. We stashed that commit, and then we applied a new changes, and we just messed up. So we can go back in here, we can right click, we can reset, and if we do hard reset, that means it will reset everything. If we do mixed reset, that will mean it will keep the working copy but reset this thing in here, right? And soft means it will keep all the changes, right? So for now, I'm going to create soft change. Now as you can see, my commit now in here, the previous commit is gone, but I have all the changes here. It's not deleted yet. If you don't want it, you can just delete this. Or what you can do, you can just apply the stash on top of this. Oops. There is one conflict, because you see, in one of the commit we have deleted this, and one of the commit we still have it. So let's for now delete this and pop this, right? Stage all the changes, and you can say some comment and commit. All right. Okay, so that's all about it today. We have talked a lot. Let's revise them in the next class, and then we are going to start talking about connecting it to the cloud. Now, one final word I want to tell you. It might seem really overwhelming, but believe me, as you move forward, as you like do more project, it will make more sense to you. Just for now, stick with me, try to capture the concept what stash means. You don't have to understand why do we need it, you just need to understand what that thing actually does, right? And then you'll get it automatically when you have to use it and when you have to not. Okay, anyways, so don't get frustrated. It's going to be easy for you guys. It's going to be okay. So just keep patient with me, and then we're going to go there. Anyways, I'll talk about remote, and then we're going to talk about this concept one more time in the next class. Till then, I'll see you and take care. Bye.